Global Broadcasting Networks presents Military Mom Talk Radio. We know behind every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine is the family supporting them. With over 200 episodes in 17 countries, over 5 seasons, with 3 million monthly listeners, we are radio strong. Now here are your hosts, Sandra, Beck, and Robin Boyd.
Hey, military moms, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Robin Boyd, and we're visiting today with Dr. Kevin Hull, and we don't get a lot of time with him, and his time is very valuable, so I want to make every second count, Rob. And I think this is such, it's so rare to have a specialist on, especially for the military families like this, so I want to get right to it and have Dr. Hull introduce himself, give his background, and then we'll get right into the content. Dr. Hull, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Sandra, and hi to you, Robin.
Hi there.
I am
glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be a part of the show. I have a private counseling practice in Lakeland, Florida, and I work primarily with children, adolescents, and families who have struggles with neurodevelopmental disorders like autism, learning disabilities, and things like that. And I've had the privilege of working with these young people and their families for over 15 years. And I'm also a professor and an author. So particularly in the field of counseling and working with children and adolescents and young adults with autism, it's given me great experiences, and I come across parents all the time who are just a little bit lost, a little bit scared, a little bit frustrated, and so I always relish the opportunity to be able to give some guidance and calm their fears and leave them with some tools and strategies to help with those difficult situations.
Well, and I'm going to jump in here and say, little fears, how about great fears, big fears? Like, Dr. Hull, you're a parent as well. You have two girls, right? 2 girls or 3 girls?
Yes, 2 girls.
2 girls. So you understand the general fears that come with parenting and raising kids. And here's one of the things that I see, especially in California, and Rob, you can probably talk about what's going over in New Hampshire, but there are kids with issues that may or may not be classified. They may not be classified by the school system, or their parents may or may not have the means to go get them classified. So they're not necessarily technically on the spectrum or technically in these things, but you can definitely see some of these trends and behaviors. So when I invited you on the show, Dr. Hull, it was not only to talk about, kids that have like diagnosed issues, but also in the general public, we've got some kids that are maybe on the bubble or aren't just, I hate to use the word classified, but that's what we do in this country. And so there's parents that look at their kids and go, well, I suspect something, or I think something's up. So we're going to address all of those kind of, whether your kid is classified or not. Rob, do you have that same issue in New Hampshire?
We do. And I think so often there's that societal pressure that, my kid should be doing this and he will be, and he's just having a bad day. And, I know he wasn't able to cope with that situation, but I'm just going to take care of him at home. He just needs a little rest. And that denial, I think, to even begin to think, well, there is a difference, and it doesn't have to, I think so many times our society is implying that a difference is a negative thing instead of a difference being just an alternative way to bring education or even coping skills. Not everybody can cope in the same way. And Dr. Kevin, I think you must have to deal with that initial sort of breaking the ice and being able to say, this is not a negative thing, this is a positive thing, that we're going to just take a different path to get to the same result.
Very true, because my overall goal is to leave the parent feeling empowered and to get rid of the fear. And so I use a number of strategies right off the bat, from using characters from history through, I read a lot of biographies and autobiographies and listen to a lot of podcasts of interviews of interesting, dynamic, outside-the-box people who often were, in their younger years, met with a lot of resistance from traditional school programs and systems, and somewhere along the way, either a parent or a teacher or someone saw their unique ability to learn and just help them along the way. But what makes me sad is how many dynamic, great people have been missed because they weren't given the option to be different. And a lot of times, especially in lower socioeconomic situations, there's not the services provided for them. So the first step is to always give the parent some encouragement and help them break through that resistance, because like you said, they're often grieving. They know something's wrong, but they often feel like if they admit something's wrong, then they'll either enable something bad to happen, or they'll not push their child hard enough. And we all feel that as parents. Where's the line between pushing them, encouraging them, but not crushing their spirit? And so it's a big task to.
Well, and the labeling, Dr. Hull,
Yeah.
like I look, you're my cousin. I'm just going to be upfront to everybody, and I'm super proud of you, and I'm super proud.
Well, thank you.
Well, because, when we were little, like especially my youngest brother, he was classified for the state of New York as being retarded. And I mean, that's what they called it in those days. I know it's not PC to use that word, but his IQ was so low. Well, he's a NASA rocket scientist today, and he flies to Austria and Germany, and he's doing all these great things. And I was considered scatterbrained. I mean, that's all I ever heard, like till sixth grade. Well, she's scatterbrained. She's scatterbrained. She can't focus. She can't blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm successful today. Doug is successful. You're successful. It might have taken different tools and different, like for me, I needed to work in absolute silence, which is why I work from home in a little box, but it doesn't mean I can't produce.
Exactly. And that's a great point. The years and years ago, many people have heard of the Montessori schools. The Montessori began because she believed that every child learns in a different way and needs an approach that's tailored to that way that the child learns. And so it's very different from what we do here in the United States, where we tend to make one system and then jam everyone into it. A real positive of living in today's times is that there's a lot of school options, from homeschooling co-ops to Montessori schools to smaller group-based education schools, and that's one of the encouraging things. Whereas your brother years and years ago, thankfully he had strong, intelligent parents, but that is part of the problem for these kids. And you mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast the ones who aren't actually fitting into a category. They don't actually meet the criteria for all of the autism spectrum criteria, but they have traits. They have these things that just trip them up. And I work with a lot of those young people, and I always connect with the school, and I get the parent to connect with the school to just help the school understand the differences that the child has. But that seems to be a big problem, is the kids that fall kind of between the cracks.
Dr. Kevin, we've got 3 minutes before the break. Do you find that the public schools, and I know it varies from SAU to SAU, I know it varies from state to state, but do you find that there are more resources for identifying various learning styles that were probably just never recognized in years past in the school systems?
Yes, I do, and I take great hope in that the with patience and understanding and people who have dedicated their lives to understanding what makes, this kid who can't do traditional math, but he can look at a lawnmower and take it apart and put it back together, yet, he may not do well in school, but yet that's a genius sitting there. That is some form of intelligence. And so how can we make that, extrapolate that to other areas to help this child instead of him getting discouraged and feeling strange. And so there's people out there that are just really innovative in learning strategies. And that's one of the things that I direct parents to, is to research those outside the box alternative education approaches to fit their child's style.
And I think parents do, if they are realizing that the kids are not being successful in school, that they do need to be advocates. I remember my daughter, she's a very, very bright girl. Like Sandra was saying, Doug was a very bright boy. But it takes us to be able to be their advocate and say, I need to have something changed. And maybe it is a 504 plan. Maybe it is an IEP. But we need to sort of be the advocate in whatever our school will provide. And if not, then we need to look elsewhere. And sometimes that's what the difficulty is that where do we go from there if our school isn't behind us? We've got a break coming up, Kevin. So on the other side of the break, we're going to continue this conversation. We're talking today with Dr. Kevin Hull, a licensed counselor, and we are talking not only about children and adolescents, but certainly adults. Adults may have never been diagnosed as young people and have struggled, and now they're saying, okay, why can't I hold this job down? Why can't I seem to get it when I've gone through 3 training sessions and I'm still having trouble? We've got lots more to talk about, so do stay with us here on Military Mom Talk Radio. We've got lots more ahead. Stay with us on Military Mom Talk Radio.
The League of Women Voters reminds you that on Election Day, we are all equal. Please join your friends and neighbors by registering to vote and going to the polls November 8th. Visit www.vote411.org to find out who will be on your ballot and how the voting process works in your community. This election is about our future, and we all need to weigh in.
It's words you never heard.
It's summertime, and you know what that means. Attack of the mosquitoes. Other names for the mosquito are galley nipper, Katy nipper, gabber napper, and gelly whopper. A quote from the 1906 book The Parsons Boys asserts that galley nippers are so called because at each nip they took a gallon. Mitzi is a deceptively cute shortening of mosquito that might be heard in Ohio. If you're in Virginia and hear someone complaining about cousins, they might have annoying relatives, or they might just be talking about mosquitoes. Why do they call mosquitoes cousins? Because there are so many and they stick so close. But whatever you call them, all this begs the question, why didn't Noah swat those 2 mosquitoes?
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
We're back with more great conversation on Military Mom Talk Radio.
Hey, Military Moms, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Robin Boyd, and we're visiting today with Dr. Kevin Hull. And I wanted to share with you guys an experience. One of my friends, while her husband was on deployment, she sustained a terrible injury. And as a result, I had her child for 3 months at a stint when he was in 5th and 6th grade. And this kid had some issues. He was classified on the spectrum, but just a broad classification, nothing really specific. And one of the things that I found was some pushback. The school district would nod their head and say, yes, 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 we'll do it. Okay, we've got this plan. All right, all is good. But I had a pushback from a couple of the teachers, and these teachers were seasoned professionals, 30-year teacher of the year, blah, blah, blah. But they tended to classify this little guy as either a good learner or a poor learner. And this kid could recite, like if you asked him about the Arizona Memorial, he could tell you every ship that sunk. He could tell the ballast weight. He could tell you, how many servicemen and women died on that vessel and where it was on a map. I mean, this kid was amazing, but he couldn't sit in a chair and sustain, the 45-minute lecture without getting up, walking around, twitching, doing a couple things. And so when you have pushback, like you could look at this kid, you could talk to this kid and go, okay, there's something going on here. And to be fair, a lot of these school districts are underfunded. The teachers are overworked. Their classroom size, like we have sometimes 36 kids in a classroom, they're busting at the seams. So I'm not here to criticize the teacher or the school district or the child, but we can't just say, oh, well, that's the way it is. You've got a kid with these things. And when we talk to, and, Robin, you have a teaching background, and Kevin, you talked about talking with school districts and teachers. There's got to be something that we can do to help parents like I was stuck kind of in the middle of this weird matrix. So I'm going to go to Dr. Hull first. And how do you talk to a school district or a teacher that's overwhelmed, too many students, and then you've got this kid, your kid, that needs more or needs something different? Like, where do you even begin? And then we're going to go to Rob to talk about her experience as a teacher.
Well, thank you. The first place to start is before the school year even begins, once the teacher has been assigned. Now, this isn't always possible because I know sometimes families are moving in the middle of the year, or they're just barely getting in under the deadline before school starts. But if at all possible, connect with the teacher and involve the guidance counselor, the school counselor. I know every state is different with those, but that school counselor or guidance counselor should be someone who understands the differences of children, whether it be a neurodevelopmental issue or a learning disability or something like that, because having an advocate with the parent to talk to the teacher is going to be helpful. And the point of this meeting is just to say, here are some differences of my child. These are some things that we've either had documented, or this is something that we're noticing. I'm just wanting to make you aware. But also with the challenges of the child, always include the strengths, include what makes them special, because you don't want to go in. A lot of parents, sometimes they're so afraid that they want their child accepted, so they go in and all they share is the negative or the things that they're afraid might happen. And I find that kind of sets the teacher up to be wary or afraid, and we want a good bond. So that's the first step. And then from there, it's a process of seeing how it goes. How is your child emotionally at the end of the day? I often encourage parents to go in and observe with younger elementary school children, just to kind of be a fly on the wall, pop in, not to spy on a teacher or make them feel paranoid, but just to see how their child is doing. And again, accessing the help of the guidance counselor or the school counselor in that process. But then if things are not going well, then the parent should call ask a meeting for the teacher, an administrator, the school guidance counselor, to say, these are some of the problems that we're having. And this is where a lot of parents feel dismissed. They feel ignored. They feel rejected. And so what helps in those situations is to have some testing done. Now, some school districts will provide the testing. Some of them won't. But specific testing can show a deficiency in, say, verbal processing or, a lot of children, especially on the autism spectrum, their auditory processing is very low. They learn visually. Well, a lot of our classrooms are set up for auditory learners. And so that can be one of the main issues that the child has.
I think so many times it's difficult because a parent doesn't know what's going on in school. And it is important to have those conferences. It is important to put I know that sometimes teachers will have a little journal that goes back and forth in the backpack. And today, we needed to have a timeout or whatever, to another timeout today. And when you start to realize that these notes, or however the communication is between the teacher and the parent, it's important to not be intimidated and to be able to say, can we set up a meeting? And that's very difficult, because when you have working parents, and especially somebody who might be an hourly worker who's not able to get away without compromising their income, that can be very difficult. But it's very important to have that communication and to be able to pick up the phone and be able to talk to the guidance counselor and say, I need some information, I need some input. Kevin, do you find
like Rob, I just want to jump in there.
Yeah.
We didn't find out I had a problem. I mean, we knew I had lots of problems paying attention and focusing, like that was a given. Yeah. But it was in my 11th grade in high school, and I told my chemistry teacher, he said, why are you making that face, Miss Beck? Why are you making that face? And I wasn't meaning to be sassy, but I just said, I wish you would stop talking so I could concentrate. And he looked at me, and then he talked to me after, and I said, I really try to block you out and read the chemistry book, because I could look at it and I could be quiet and I could learn anything. But the minute he started talking, I lost it all. And I couldn't focus on whether it was the kid chewing gum next to me, the other kid ripped his paper with his eraser. All of that got jumbled up in my head. If you left me alone and I could be quiet, and I think talking with your kid on what works at some level also has to be in the matrix, not just the teacher, the guidance counselor, and all these things, but the kid too.
And I think it does come into play where, yes, like Dr. Kevin said, sometimes we might need some screening. And it isn't meaning to find something wrong. It's just meaning to find what that learning process is. Emily is my daughter, a very bright girl. She was a very smart child, and it sounds like the bragging parent, but what she could not do was absorb multiple directives. So if you were given a directive A, B, and C, she got A, she might have got part B, but of course the magic C was dropped off, and of course she didn't complete the answers, and therefore was getting very, very poor grades. So we set up a 504 plan for her to be able to test down in the resource room, so that she was able to have at least a little verbal prompt, and that little and then of course she was able to then break down the directives so that she could answer them, and certainly she was able to shine.
Hey, Kevin, what are some signs you hear? When you're listening to kids, so parents can hear, they heard Rob talk about, what Emily had, and you heard what, me and Doug had, some complaints that we had, stop talking, I can't focus. There's some other things. Well, but these are real indicators of what the kid needs. And you have to hear this. Talking to the kids, what are some things that you hear that maybe our parents listening today can go, oh, I heard my son or daughter say that. That's a clue.
Well, one area, a lot of the kids that I work with, it's an issue of them feeling safe. When they don't feel safe, they become reactive or they shut down. And one of the biggest complaints I hear is that during the transitions, like walking from class to class or going from the classroom to lunch, going from the classroom to PE or back from PE, is when a lot of things happen. Either there's a commotion or it's chaotic or something like that. And a lot of times when the kids that I work with have gotten in trouble in school, it's because they lashed out and because something happened. They got pushed, they got shoved. So these transition times are difficult for these children who rely on the environment to be predictable and stable and safe with good routine, with good structure. And so when I talk to teachers, I help them with classroom management. And one of the areas that we focus on is, maybe grabbing an extra para-professional but just being mindful of that transition time can be a time where it feels chaotic to some kids. The other, I hear all kinds, but one other one that comes to mind is the noise level in the room. Because a lot of children are sensitive to sounds, lights, sensory type things. And a lot of the kids I work with are almost traumatized because the lunchroom is so loud. And I don't know if you've ever, when your kids were younger, you went and had lunch with them. And I remember coming out of my daughter's elementary school and just like taking deep breaths, like, wow, that was crazy,
Yes.
And so those are just a few of the things. The individual teacher complaints that I get sometimes is the child feels like the teacher isn't patient or doesn't understand them, things like that. But those are things to listen for, because if your child doesn't feel safe, they cannot learn.
Very true. And so oftentimes, too, every generation has experienced, I don't feel good, I don't want to go to school, I don't want to go, I don't want to go, the tears, the crying. There's something more than just a stomach ache sometimes. There's something more, and it could be an interaction with children, but it also is that feeling of I just can't cope. So we're talking with Dr. Kevin Hall today. We're going to be back right after this, right here on Military Mom Talk Radio. We've got lots more ahead. Stay with us on Military Mom Talk Radio.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Did you know that the average teenager drinks twice as much soda as milk? Since 1983, sugar consumption in the U.S. is up 28%. Why is that? There are several reasons, but one of the most common is soft drinks. 20-ounce beverages have become the norm, and it's not surprising to find that 43% of our sugar comes from drinks. Sugar is blamed for poor nutritional diets. USDA data shows that people whose diets are high in added sugar eat less calcium, fiber, iron, protein, and many other important nutrients. Fat-free foods are also a culprit. Since sugar is fat-free, many people tend to think it's okay to eat as much as they want. Remember that just because a food is fat-free does not mean that it's calorie-free also. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond.
It's words you never heard.
Did you know that many prospective college students work under the management of handlers? A tutor helps with SAT preparation, while a consultant concocts the perfect resume to present to colleges. They say the closest people ever come to perfection is on their resume. But college admission staffs aren't so bubbleable, that means gullible, when it comes to sorting out students' qualifications. What's another word for a person with enough education to go to college? A tancum. The graduation cap was initially a hood and is believed to date back to the Celtic times when Druid priests wore capes and hoods to symbolize their intelligence.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
We're back with more great conversation on Military Mom Talk Radio.
Hey, Military Moms, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Robin Boyd, and we are visiting with Dr. Kevin Hall. And one of the things that happens in the military families is we have a lot of transitions. When my friend was injured and her husband was deployed, so I had their fifth grader for 3 months. And this kid had been gone from the American school system to the Japanese school system, from the Japanese school system back to the American school system, then into my household without either parent, especially his mom. She was, injured in Australia. Then she had to come here and be hospitalized, and dad had to work. So this is a very real scenario for some of our military kids. And on a good day, transitioning schools, transitioning countries, transitioning households, transitioning parenting, one parent, two parents, grandparents, all these transitions are very normal existences for our military kids. But when you take a kid on the spectrum or a kid with some challenges or issues, it can just go bananas really quickly. So I'd like to go to Dr. Kevin Hull to talk about some best practices with transitions, both for kids on the spectrum or off the spectrum, and then for parents, because I think transitions is one of the hardest things that military families have to attend to as part of their normal. Dr. Hull.
Absolutely. And what's been proven is that a child who transitions well, meaning that they remain mentally, emotionally intact, they tend to develop better coping later on in life. And so you'll often hear an adult talk about how terrifying and traumatic it was when they moved as a kid, and that still bothers them. So with younger children, one of the best things to do is to prepare them that the move is coming. And I know this isn't always possible. Sometimes it's, you may only have a week, but the language of children is play. And what I instruct parents to do who are in this situation is to get some toys out. If it's a boy or girl, they love Legos, grab some Lego minifigures, grab some stuffed animals, some puppets, and play out the scenario of 2 or 3 of the stuffed animals are going to be moving away, and this other one, 2 or 3, have one that represents the child, that the child can pretend that that's them, and then play out the scenario of packing up, moving, going to a new school, and involving the child in the play process using the Lego minifigures or the stuffed animals or the puppets can help the child go through the experience but at a safe distance. And I even instruct parents to use play like this to explain something new that's coming up. For instance, a new way of handling discipline, to play it out, a new way of going to a new school, adjusting to a new routine, because we forget that children deal with the world around them through play. I have one parent who she plays with her son on Minecraft, and she has found a way to make Minecraft a metaphor for everything from, when her ex-husband, dad, doesn't, at the last minute he cancels and doesn't come and pick up the son, and he's disappointed. They get the Minecraft out, and they go into a Minecraft world, and they play out these themes. And so with younger children, that is one way to give them a chance to go through it in a safe way and also acclimate their brain to the process. With adolescents, what we have to remember is that the brain is going through so many transitions during adolescence that they lose the ability to take perspective. And what that means is they lose the ability to see a situation from another vantage point. So a teenager will react emotionally because they're looking at a situation simply one way. So what helps is when the parent presents it from a lot of different views. For instance, if it's one of the parents is got their deployment orders and we have to go. Connecting the dots between there's a governing agency, there is a hierarchy of authority, and we are in that process, and so therefore we are moving. That helps the teenager rather than just simply blame the parent. You're helping to broaden the perspective, because their brains naturally go to just one outcome, and it's a black or white, good or bad. They lose the ability to see things from that other vantage point. So that can be helpful. And then I have something that I teach parents called providing a cushion. When the transition happens, being mindful that it's going to take an emotional toll on everyone. And so giving some grace with maybe letting them have a little extra TV time, a little extra tablet time, giving them a little bit of more attention, building that in as this process happens, that helps create a cushion, if at all possible. With adolescents also, starting a new school can be pretty tough because they're at a stage in development where they feel insecure. They're building their identity, so there's a lot of problems with self-worth. And so a parent who checks in on them, who is supportive of the process, helps them ease that transition into that new school. So those are just a few ways.
I love the play aspect of it and giving this preparation ahead of time, Kevin. And I'm thinking, as you're describing this, what you're doing is you're allowing the child to have control over his feelings. And I think that's the one time when children lash out, is when they start to feel vulnerable and out of control, is that they don't know how to kind of pull back and have any control in what's happening to them. And this play activity, this play action is giving them the ability to have control in the scenario. That's beautiful.
Very true.
Sandra,
art.
Yeah.
I was going to say art is another way, drawing things out, clay, building things. It's just a way to release the emotions.
Well, and I just want to jump in here because we talked about transitioning, with deployments and moves and family structure changes. And the military has such a high rate of divorce. I myself am divorced. And, one of the transitions that we have trouble with in our household, and I bet everybody else does too, who has preteens and teens, is this transition of every other weekend going to dad's. Like that usually results, Kevin, in our household, kind of like a lot of anxiety, fighting between the kids before they go. Then they go, come back, and they're just monsters. Like they turn into the biggest monsters for about 3 or 4 hours until they're fed and they get settled. And I've been working this transition in divorce for 8 years now, and it's not better or worse. It's just different as they grow. So I need some help, and I'm sure every other divorced parent out there needs it too.
Yeah. And a lot of times, parents who don't understand will think that there's something wrong with the child. And what I tell parents is, your child is actually normal for reacting this way, because if we could transport ourselves into their brain and body, you would feel the most immense stress that you can imagine. And even most adults would have a hard time channeling that and dealing with it. So, again, one of the things that I teach parents is to play out, for younger kids, playing out the process, because they'll often say, I've had them in my office even on a Friday afternoon, and they'll just, something's wrong, and I'll say, hey, what's going on today? And they'll say, well, I got to go to Dad's this weekend, and so I'll grab the stuffed animals and I'll grab the Lego minifigures or whatever, and I'll say, hey, let's play out what might happen. Well, my stepmom yelled at me last time I was there, and she called me a slob, and so I said, okay, let's play this out. All right, pick one that's her, you be her, and I'll be you, and let's see what happens. And by doing that, you're handing the kid the control of, let's see what happens. And it's amazing how, even though it doesn't magically get rid of everything, it's a release for that moment, and they can feel some of that pressure dissipate. And then one of the things that I teach parents to do is after, when you transition them, here's the problem with a lot of the transition of divorced parents. They pick up the kid and they go straight to either, like, let's say dad's picking them up. He picks them up. They're in a hurry. They go straight to his house. He they get all the backpacks out and everything. And then it's like, okay, now we're doing this, or, mom picks them up and they've got all this stuff planned. What I try to get them to see is that rather than doing that, build in some just downtime. For instance, before going straight home, stop off at a park and just run around, or have something else that is no stress, that is laid back. So I know that can't always happen because we all have schedules and things like that, but that is a great way to just ease that transition to and from, because what it is, it's a fear of, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm afraid. And that's what the child is thinking and feeling.
That is an amazing perspective, and it's something that's simple that you don't think about until you really say it out loud like you just did and said, oh, yeah, of course. Let's just build that detox time in so that we're able to get rid of that energy, able to just transition back into another environment. We're with Dr. Kevin Hall today. We want to direct you to some of his books, one of which is Play Therapy and Asperger's Syndrome. And I have a feeling that play therapy would be good for anybody, adult, child, spectrum, no spectrum. Those are something that we all need sometimes. And we'll be back with Dr. Kevin right after these messages on Military Mom Talk Radio. We'd love to hear from you. Check us out at MilitaryMomTalkRadio.com or find us on Twitter and Facebook. Our shows are available on iTunes anytime from 0-100 hours to 23:59. For now, stay right where you are. There's more Military Mom Talk Radio after these messages.
Have you heard? The pages of American Patchwork and Quilting magazine come to life on our new weekly online radio show, American Patchwork and Quilting. Join Pat Sloan, our blogging and quilt designer host, as she talks about the latest trends, ideas, and inspirations. Her guests include quilt pattern designers, authors, quilt shop owners, and our editors, all quilters, just like you. Call in with your questions. Get quilting tips from industry experts. Learn about free patterns. Hear behind-the-scenes stories from our magazines, American Patchwork and Quilting, Quilt Sampler, and Quilts and More. Get the scoop on free stuff and find out more about the best independent quilt shops in North America. To listen to a live show, tune in Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Just log on to allpeoplequilt.com/radio. To hear past shows, go to iTunes and search for American Patchwork and Quilting Radio. We hope you'll join us because we know that quilting changes everything.
It's merging and reheard.
It's well known in medical practices that patients tend to lie about their health habits. They lie about how much they smoke, understate how much they drink or eat, and overstate how much they exercise. What's another word for those little white lies we like to tell in the examination room? Taradiddles. Doctors have a rule of thumb. Whatever the patient says they're drinking, smoking, or eating, multiply it by 2. But it's hard to come clean about your habits when you know you're in for some jobation from the doctor. That's criticism we don't want to hear. If physicians want us to be honest with them, I suggest they try being a little less judgmental and use a little suaviloquence. That's soothing, encouraging talk.
It's merging and reheard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
We're back with more great conversation on Military Mom Talk Radio.
Hey, military moms, this is Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd, and we are here with Dr. Kevin Hull, and we're talking about transitioning, specifically kids on or off the classified spectrum that have trouble transitioning. I have trouble transitioning. I'm not a good transitioner. I have a lot of anxiety and frustration. I try to over-control things, so I get it. And when kids have to go back and forth between households, and that can happen because of a deployment, because of a divorce, because of any number of reasons to the military family. But there's some trends that I see that I can share with having, deployment kids in my household, having my own kids go through a divorce. There's that transition period before and after the change occurs, whether they're going to mom or dad's house or grandpa's house or aftercare or whatever. There's that time period where they just go bananas. And I've experienced it. I think every parent has experienced it. And this is not even a reflection on the other parent. Even going to a happy other parent's household, this was the funny thing, Dr. Kevin, is like my kids still had a blowout going to grandma and grandpa or aunts and uncles on both sides of the family that they love. So it's not always that the other parent or the other family is the bad person or bad things happen. It's the kid has got to adjust to something that they can't control. And I call it potty mouth. They go like potty mouth bananas, especially after the transition. So I'd like some rules of engagement from you that parents like me could do, especially single parents that have to play mom and dad roles at certain times. What can we do to help those little ticking time bombs that come and go?
Well, the first thing is to be prepared and offer the child, when possible, help them know what's coming. So creating a schedule, letting them know 3 or 4 days ahead of time that we're going to be going to grandma's right after school. As early as possible to let them know that, and then reminding them of that. Especially as they get older, between the ages of 10 and 13, we often expect, well, you're older now. You should be able to adjust to the world like I do and fly by the seat of your pants. Well, they're actually resisting that because they're more grounded than most adults sometimes. So by being creating a schedule, by being prepared and giving them the information beforehand can help with a lot of the emotional backlash. And then from there, you can use a system of rewards. You can, and I'm cautious when I say the word reward, because I don't mean giving them money, but knowing how your kid ticks, what motivates them, and kind of having them join you as an ally in the activity. For instance, saying, it's a little bit out of the routine, but remember, we're going to grandma's tonight, right after school. We're going to be there for dinner. I know you don't want to go because you'd rather be playing with your friends, but if I see a good attitude, if you help me out with this, and I'm willing to do something for you. Well, what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for me? Well, let's talk about that, and not bribing your kid and not manipulating them, but especially for single parents and especially single moms raising boys, creating that idea of we're allies together in this, that I'm not leaning on you for emotional support, but in caring for you, I need a little bit help from you as well. This is like a ship, and we all got to work together. And then when the child sees that, hey, mom noticed that I didn't complain, mom noticed that I helped out a little bit, and I actually enjoyed being at grandma's, and it wasn't so bad. And then, they get a special day with mom, or they get a special activity, a special outing, or something like that, just that the parent noticed. can go a long way, and using that system then also helps the child understand the team concept of family. Some of us as parents were such good parents that we're managers. You know, all we do is manage. We get them dressed, we keep them alive, we get them fed, we get them to and from and all that. But we don't have a relationship with them, and they see us as just kind of like the equipment manager of the baseball team, and we don't want that. We want a connection. And so by scheduling time, creating a sense of, hey, we're together in this, you move past this management piece to where there's relationship and connection and working together.
And therefore opening up a door for conversation, because I think when they feel managed, when they feel pushed from one scenario to the next, they're not going to open up their mouth and say anything, even if it's just bothering the heck out of them, and it's going to fester. Once it festers, then that's when it explodes in that negative behavior that, of course, then becomes a punishment. But they got the attention.
And in nearly 20 years of working with kids of divorce, because before I went into private practice, I worked with foster care and in community mental health. And in almost 20 years of doing that, what I consistently hear from young adults who went through it, some of them as early as 3 years old, what helped them the most was knowing exactly what to expect when I went to dad's or when I went to mom's. When there were situations that were murky where, you know, 1 minute dad's just laying on the couch and we could do whatever, but then the next minute he yelled at us to clean his house the whole weekend, or, you know, mom, we never knew when we were going to eat or where we were going on Saturday, or, you know, that chaotic thing is the thing that really makes them feel not safe. And so just by simply having an organized routine, structure, scheduling helps the children so much.
Well, I just want to add something here. You know, Kev, when you were talking, it reminded me of jobs I've had in my past. And I wouldn't mind going to work. In fact, I liked going to work when I knew what my boss expected of me. I knew what I needed to do. And yeah, I still might have been overwhelmed at the workload or things come up, but I knew what to expect. The jobs that I hate the most, like, you know, those ulcer ones where you come in and you don't know if you're going to get yelled at, don't know what they're going to ask you to do, and it's just awful. So is that like the same feeling, you know, we have going to kind of a unstructured, crazy ass job versus going over to another environment? Is that fair?
That's the exact metaphor that I use for parents, for both children of divorce who are in situations that are chaotic and who are at school where they don't feel safe. I say, imagine the worst job you've ever had. Now you have to do it for 18 years and you cannot quit. And there's no way out. And parents go, oh my gosh, you know, and that's how kids feel. And I'm such an advocate of building relationship. I'm such an advocate that not being your kid's buddy or best friend, but being an ally in the journey of development, and that they can look back and go, wow, my dad was there when I needed him. My mom was there when I needed her. And they were organized, and they moved. Their movements were purposeful and intentional to connect with me. You know, a robot could raise our children, but we don't want to be robots. You know, that's not the point. Healthy, well-adjusted adults are people who, you know, have had somewhere in their childhood, they had either a teacher, a youth pastor, hopefully a parent that was an ally and an advocate for them.
Well, and one of our guests, and maybe it was you on an earlier show, I can't remember, told me, especially in an ugly divorce situation or a foster care situation, kids learn things that other kids learn when they're older or maybe as an adult. So, these things can be valuable to them, because it's painful to watch. It's tough and painful to watch. But I have one question for you. When your kid turns from like, I love you, Mom, you're the best, you got my back, Mom, to like the 13-year-old eye rolling, you're stupid.
Yes.
When you're in a divorce situation, it feels almost like even worse. I don't know, because I don't know what it feels like not to be divorced. But, there's a change that happens in teenagers. And is that normal? Like for, how do you know what you're doing is right if you're doing the same things and your kid turns? Is that just teenagers?
We just have a couple of minutes, so it's going to be a quick one.
Yes, I know.
It will be quick. It's a brain thing. It's the child, the adolescent is at a place of insecurity. They're unsure of themselves, but they want so much to be the expert and to be in control. So what they approach the parent with is that dismissive attitude, because for them, it's scary to say, I don't know, I really need you. And so that's why good parents blast through that wall and they check in. They, even though the 15-year-old has their door shut, they knock on the door, they say, hey, I'm coming in, let's talk a little bit. If you don't want to talk, that's fine, but I'm checking on you. That gives the child deep down a sense of security, just like clear boundaries, clear expectations, clear consequences. But be prepared, especially you single moms out there raising boys. You're going to go through this little period. It's like when the Apollo missions, they lost contact with mission control for about 3 minutes when they re-entered the atmosphere. It's the same thing in the teenage years, but just stay strong, don't react, and just be consistent.
And I think sometimes just knowing that you're there is deep down, they know they're comforted. They will eventually come around. I can attest to that.
Yeah, they will.
They will come around. Dr. Kevin Hull, thank you so much for being with us today. If anybody wants more information or to find more about the books that he has published, go to Dr. and it's Dr. Kevin Hull, HULL.com. We'll be back again soon on Military Mom Talk Radio. Take care, everyone. Have a great week. Thanks for tuning in to Military Mom Talk Radio. Want more information? Check us out at militarymomtalkradio.com or find us on iTunes for more than 200 free episodes. Drop us an email or find us on Facebook. We are looking forward to another great discussion. We hope you'll join us on Military Mom